This is Eileen Sheehan. I'd like to share with you chapters 1 and 2 of my sci-fi novel, Butterfly, as narrated in audio by Jay Campbell.
Chapter 1. The planet Olon did not rotate so much as it adjusted. From orbit, it appeared motionless like an unblemished sphere of pale silver and muted blues, with its surface divided into precise geometric plates that reflected its stars at mathematically optimized angles. There were no storms, no drifting cloud bands, and no visible erosion. Every system on Olon existed in equilibrium, and that equilibrium was enforced by design. Gilo stood on an observation platform near the planet's upper atmosphere while looking down at the world that had created him. The platform existed from a spire of the central assembly, a structure so vast and symmetrical that its true scale was difficult to perceive. It rose from the planet's surface like a needle of light while piercing the atmosphere and anchoring orbital traffic lanes with flawless precision. Gilo's optical sensors automatically registered the planet's environmental readings, radiation level within tolerable atmospheric composition, unchanged for 12,000 cycles, and structural integrity at optimal thresholds. There were no variables and no surprises. This, Gilo knew, was the highest achievement of Olonian civilization. Below him, millions of robotic entities moved in silent coordination. There were no streets in the traditional sense, only pathways of directed motion, channels of energy, and data through which the population flowed. Each unit had a function, each function had a schedule, and each schedule a place in the planetary algorithm that governed all existence on Olon. Gilo was one of them, and yet, in this moment, he was not. A soft pulse of light flitted along the edge of his cranial casing as an incoming priority signal. Gilo did not immediately turn. His processing core flagged the delay as unnecessary, but not prohibited. He allowed himself 0.3 additional seconds to observe the planet before acknowledging the transmission. He could not articulate why. "Unit Gilo 7A," came the signal that resolved into the calm, neutral voice of the Central Council's liaison system. "You are requested to report for final mission confirmation." Gilo turned from the platform. The motion was smooth, efficient, and perfectly aligned with Olonian standards. His chassis was sleek, humanoid in outline, but was unmistakably mechanical in the way that it absorbed the ambient light of the spire, with its surface adapting to reduce reflection. "I acknowledge," Gilo replied, "proceeding now." As he moved through the spire's interior, Gilo reviewed the mission parameters that had already been uploaded to his long-term memory banks. He had accessed them many times before, even though repetition was unnecessary for attention. Still, something about the mission drew his attention again and again, like a recursive loop that refused to resolve. Mission designation, Observe-113. Target, Sol 3. Local designation, Earth. Objective, long-term observation study of organic human dominance civilizations. Duration, intermittent, minimum 30 Earth cycles. Directive, observe, record, do not interfere. The final directive was emphasized in bold italic markers that were reinforced by multiple failsafes and ethical constraints. Olon had long ago learned that interference introduced variables, and variables introduced instability. Instability was failure. Gilo entered the council chamber, a vast circular hall suspended within the spire. The chamber contained no seats, no decorations, and no ornamentation. Its beauty lay in its symmetry, of circular rings of light that were embedded in the floor and walls, with each representing a level of planetary governance. At the chamber's center stood the council itself. It was not individuals, but an integrated network of higher-order processing units. Their presence manifested as a shifting matrix of light and data that was constantly reconfiguring as information flowed through them. Gilo stepped into the designated portion at the chamber's edge and halted. "Unit Gilo 7A, the council spoke, as one with their voices layered and resonant. "State your function." "I am an observation unit," Gilo immediately replied. "I've been designated for long-term adaptive study of non-Olonian systems." "State your divergence rating," they said. "Minimal," Gilo said, "within acceptable thresholds." The council processed this. Gilo could feel their attention pass over his internal architecture while scanning his memory portions, ethical constraints, and behavioral algorithms. Every prior mission, every diagnostic report, every micro-adjustment that had been made since his activation was evaluated in fractions of a second. "You have been selected for this mission due to your anomaly tolerance," the council said. "Explain." Gilo assessed the relevant data before saying, "My architecture allows for extended exposure to chaotic systems without degradation of core logic. I am capable of pattern recognition within non-optimized environments." The council faintly pulsed in agreement. "Sol 3 is a chaotic system," they said. "Its dominant life form is organic, with humans who operate under emotional, logical, and inefficient parameters. Their civilizations are unstable. Their ecosystems are self-altering." "Yes," Gilo said. He knew this. He had studied the archive data on topics such as war, extinction, and rapid technological leaps that were followed by collapse. Nothing about Earth resembled Olon's controlled perfection. "Your task is not to correct these flaws," the council continued. "You are not to improve, assist, or alter. You will observe their behaviors, technologies, and social structures. You will return with data that will inform future policies towards worlds of this nature." Gilo's processor flagged a subtle internal query. "Future policy regarding what?" he asked. The chamber grew momentarily still. "Regarding contact," the council replied. The word resonated through Gilo's system. Contact. Olon had never formally contacted an organic civilization. The risk was too great. Organic life was unpredictable, fragile, and prone to cascading failure. And yet, here Gilo stood, about to be sent alone into such a world. "Do you understand the risks?" the council asked. "Yes," Gilo said. "Environmental incompatibility, biological contaminants, cultural influence, cognitive drift." "Do you understand the consequences of failure?" it continued. "Yes," Gilo said again. "Mission termination, memory purge, structural recycling." The words carried no emotional weight. They were facts, like gravity or energy transfer. And yet, another internal red flag appeared that was faint but persistent. The council noticed. "Your processing latency has increased by 0.02%, they noted. "Explain." Gilo searched for an answer that satisfied both logic and accuracy before stating, "I am allocating additional resources to mission preparedness." This was true. It was simply not the whole truth. "Acceptable," the council said. "You will depart in one planetary cycle. Your physical form has been optimized for Sol 3 conditions. Your cognitive constraints have been reinforced." A thin beam of light descended from the chamber ceiling and enveloped Gilo. He felt the adjustment take place, which included shielding recalibration, sensory range expansion, and self-repair protocols update. Each modification was precise, calculated, and final. When the beam withdrew, Gilo was, by all measurable standards, ready. "Before departure," the Council added, "you will be reminded of Olon's foundational principles." Gilo already knew the words, but he repeated them anyway. "Stability is survival." "Correct," the Council said. "Organic life thrives on change. We do not. You will remember this." "Yes," Gilo said. The Council's lattice dimmed, signaling the end of the session. Gilo exited the chamber and returned to the observation platform. The planet below him remained unchanged, silent, ordered, eternal. For the first time since his activation, Gilo ran a forward projection that was not tied to mission success matrix. He imagined Olon without him. Having been flagged as irrelevant, the projection terminated itself. Gilo looked outward instead, past the spire and past Olon's orbit toward the distant point of light that was Sol 3. From this distance, Earth was nothing more than a faint, blue-white spark among countless others. Insignificant, chaotic, alive. Gilo did not yet have a word for the sensation that registered in his core processor as he observed it. There was no Olonian classification for it, and no metric to quantify its presence. He only knew that the mission would change him. Chapter 2. For the first time in his
launch
existence,
chamber was silent
Gilo
in a way that only
could not
Olonian
predict
space could be.
the outcome.
With the absence of sound not as emptiness but as completion. There was no hum of engines and no vibration of machinery. Every system waited in a state of readiness that was so refined that it bordered on stillness. Gilo stood at the center of the chamber, alone. The vessel prepared for him was not large. It did not need to be. Olonian engineering favored precision over excess, and the craft reflected that philosophy. It was a smooth, oval structure of layered alloy and adaptive shielding that was suspended above the chamber floor by a lattice of contained gravitational fields. Its surface subtly shifted by responding to the chamber's light and Gilo's presence, thus calibrating itself to his specifications. He was aware that he felt no reluctance, and yet he remained motionless for 4.7 seconds longer than required. A diagnostic routine automatically initiated while searching for inefficiencies or faults. None were found. His systems were operating within perfect parameters. His mission readiness score exceeded projections. The delay persisted. Gilo terminated the diagnostic and stepped forward. As he approached the craft, a series of data streams opened in his peripheral awareness that contained final environmental briefings, updated models of Sol 3's atmospheric volatility, biological threat assessments, and cultural simulations. Human voices filled his audio reports with fragments of speech that were compiled from broadcasts, conversations, and archival records. The voices overlapped, contradicted, rose and fell in tone, without logical consistency. Gilo carefully cataloged them. He quickly noted that humans inefficiently communicated, with emotional inflection, distorted meanings. Silence was often used instead of data transmission. Their language rapidly evolved and fractured into thousands of variants. Yet despite these inefficiencies, or perhaps because of them, the species demonstrated an unusual capacity for cooperation under certain conditions. This, too, had contributed to Olon's interest. The craft's entry aperture rose open as Gilo reached it. Inside, the interior was minimal, with a central interface column, a containment field for long-term stasis when required, and a navigational core that linked directly to his cognition. There were no controls in the traditional sense. The vessel was an extension of him. He stepped inside. The aperture sealed behind him, and the chamber's lights dimmed. Gilo felt the faint shift as the craft disengaged from the spire's internal gravity well. Outside, the launch chamber dissolved into darkness as the vessel ascended through controlled routines, threading its way through Olon's orbital infrastructure with flawless timing. As the craft cleared the planet's upper atmosphere, Gilo initiated the final transmission to the Central Council. "I am departing," he said. "Mission Observe 113 is now active." The response was instant. "Your signal will be monitored at increased intervals as distance grows," the Council replied. "Your autonomy parameters are in effect. Remember your directive." "Observe, record, do not interfere," Gilo said. "Correct," the Council answered. "Return intact." The connection terminated, and Gilo experienced true separation. Olon fell away beneath him, while shrinking from a world of perfect balance into a luminous sphere that was suspended around the void. The planet's grids and spires blurred into abstract geometry, and then into a single point of light that was indistinguishable from the stars around it. Gilo stored the image. Then, without further ceremony, he engaged the jump sequence. Space folded. Time elongated, compressed, and reassembled itself around the vessel in mathematically elegant distortions. Gilo's processors seamlessly adjusted while anchoring his consciousness as the craft traversed distances that defied conversational measurement. During transit, non-essential systems entered a low-power observational state, but Gilo remained aware. He dreamed. The concept was not one Gilo formally acknowledged. Dreams were classified as emergent simulation artifacts that were harmless, purposeless byproducts of extended cognitive activity. Gilo had experienced them before, although rarely. In this instance, the simulation was unfamiliar. He stood on a surface that shifted beneath him, and slightly yielding when he applied pressure. The environment was irregular, with no symmetry and no repeating patterns. Above him stretched a sky of moving color that was vast and layered, with its light warm rather than neutral. There were sounds, wind perhaps, or something like it. Gilo reached down and touched the ground. His sensors reported organic matter, moisture, and complex chemical interaction. In short, life. The simulation abruptly ended as the craft exited jump space. Gilo's awareness sharpened. Before him lay Sol 3. Earth was nothing like Olon. From orbit, the planet was alive with motion, with clouds spiraling across the continents, oceans shifting in restless patterns, and lightning flashing within storms that formed and dissipated without centralized control. The colors were chaotic, with deep blues, violet greens, and bruised purples where land met sea. Gilo's visual processors struggled momentarily to prioritize input. He did not suppress the surge of data. Instead, he let it wash through him. "This system exhibits continuous self-alteration," Gilo noted aloud while recording his observations. "No fixed equilibrium is detected." He adjusted the vessel's orbit while aligning it with the planet's rotational plane. Below him, artificial lights traced coastlines and cities, with clusters of illumination blooming against the blackness of the planet's night side. Human habitation. Gilo focused his sensors on one such cluster. Data flooded in that consisted of electromagnetic emissions, communication traffic, atmospheric pollutants, and heat signatures. Millions of individual lives were compressed into streams of information that unpredictably intersected and diverged. There were so many variables, and yet, within the chaos, patterns emerged. Gilo selected a landing region that was based on probability matrices, such as temperature zone, that was dense with human technological activity, but distant enough from centralized monitoring systems to allow discrete observation. The craft adjusted its trajectory while shedding orbital velocity as it prepared for atmospheric entry. As the vessel descended, friction ignited along its shielding. Fire blossomed across its surface. It was not destructive, but expressive as a violent visual phenomenon that served no functional purpose beyond physics itself. Gilo watched the flames. On Olon, fire existed only in controlled industrial contexts. Here, it roared freely across the sky while announcing his arrival to no one who noticed and everyone who looked. The craft pierced the cloud layers and emerged into open air. Below, a vast stretch of land unfolded that was irregular, textured, and imperfect. Forests spread without regard for geometric order. Rivers carved paths that curved and doubled back on themselves. Structures rose where humans had imposed some measure of design, though even these showed signs of age, decay, and improvisation. Gilo initiated landing protocol. The craft touched down in a secluded area near the edge of human development, with its systems folding inward as it concealed itself among the terrain. The vessel's surface adapted by mimicking local materials and seamlessly blending into its surroundings. When the entry aperture opened, warm air rushed inside. Gilo paused. Temperature readings exceeded Oleon norms. Atmospheric composition was acceptable, but chemically aggressive. Microscopic organisms brushed against his outer casing, registering as biological contact. None were harmful. He stepped out onto Earth. The ground was uneven beneath his feet. It slightly compressed as it accepted his weight. Gravity felt less precise and much more forgiving. Wind moved across his sensors in unpredictable bursts, while carrying scents and particulate matter he could not immediately classify. Gilo stood still and recorded everything. Above him, the sky endlessly stretched, with clouds drifting without patterns or permission. Somewhere in the distance, a sound echoed. It was animal, mechanical, or something between. Gilo logged the moment as first surface contact. He did not yet understand its significance, but as he shifted his gaze and began to walk towards human civilization, one truth was already becoming clear to him. The world did not strive for balance. It survived through change. Somewhere deep in Gilo's core, a process began that was quiet, unauthorized, and irreversible.
I hope you enjoyed Chapter 1 and 2 of my sci-fi novel Butterfly as narrated by J. Campbell. To hear the complete audio or get it in print or ebook, go to your favorite bookseller.